Okay, so time for the exercises. Every time we start, we always start off in the same way. So I'm going to talk you through that first of all and tell you what it's called. We start off with our feet parallel, so toes pointing forwards and about shoulder width apart. So it's quite useful to have a mirror if handy, because you can see then exactly whether or not your feet are shoulder width apart. Often we'll find that they're a little bit too wide or a little bit too narrow. And hopefully I can give you feedback on that in the future. Yeah. Whether or not they're parallel is quite a tricky one to do as well. What you really want to do is to make sure that if there is an error, it's on the side of pigeon toes, so the toes should be turning slightly in rather than slightly out. Ideally parallel completely, but err on the side of pigeon toes. Then you want to just move the body so that you bring the weight into the balls of the feet. That is, the weight is centered on the balls of the feet. Okay? Don't worry about everything else, just sort of stand normally. Then, standing there like that, lift up your toes off the ground slightly. Gently stretch them forwards as best you can. And then, as best you can, place your toes back down 2 by 2. So starting with the big toes, place them down gently. So you're kind of placing the toes down like that. And then the next pair of toes, and then the next pair of toes, until you get to the little toes. And then follow it round. So try and get the outside edges of the feet in connection with the ground, and then right the way through to the heels, but maintaining the weight centered on the balls of the feet. So now you should have quite a nice structure to your feet. Your weight centered in the balls of the feet, the toes are providing some stability, the edges of the feet are providing stability, and the heels are providing stability. And just pause like that and notice what it feels like. If you are, just check that you're not clawing the ground, because if you're clawing the ground, then you're going to create tension in the feet. We don't want tension, we just want expansion in the feet. So we want a nice structure so that we've got a good connection with the ground and we're supporting the body well with the feet, and they're not flat, as best you can. Yeah. Okay, keeping that. Then soften the ankles, soften the knees, and soften the hips. So we just have this gentle softness in the legs, but keep that structure in the feet. Then shift the pelvis back. So I'm pointing here at the hips because it's quite useful to sort of push your pelvis back with your fingers so that it's vertically above, or feels like it's vertically above, the heels. And then lean forwards from the hips to bring the weight centers back into the balls of the feet. Yeah, because when you bring the pelvis back, you'll find it goes into the heels. So keep the pelvis where it is and lean forwards from the hips a little bit. It will feel a bit weird. It will feel as if you're sticking your bum out slightly. But hopefully nobody's watching, and actually it never looks as bad as it feels. It's never sticking out as far as you think it is. The reason we do that is because we want to take the weight of the upper body out of the lower spine, out of the small of the back. This leaning forwards brings the centre of gravity into the abs. And it frees off the spine. Once you've done that, your spine is now free to stretch up. So you want to try to create lift. Try and lift the head up whilst maintaining this forwards lean. And at the same time, your shoulders are soft and the arms are soft, and everything in the arms are soft, so they're just hanging there like a pair of curtains. And because of that, if you're leaning forwards correctly, then the hands will be just a little bit in front of the hips, just sort of hanging there, a little bit in front of the hips. If they're touching, you're probably not leaning forwards far enough, or the pelvis isn't back far enough, or a combination of those things. If they're leaning right the way over here, then you're leaning too far forwards. And then you just want to try to stretch the head up. So the other thing you've got to watch out for is this forwards head posture. Yeah, so you want to try to bring the head back on top of the shoulders. Bring it right the way back on top of the shoulders. and keep that stretch in the spine. Now, when you do that, when you bring the head back on top of the shoulders, any tension you've got in your chest will cause it to lift up. Yeah, because you'll have this tension here, and as you bring the head back, then this will have to lift up, unless you can let go of the tension, which is quite tricky, but we'll get there eventually, yeah? So if you don't have the forward head posture, you probably haven't got this tension, but if you do, then you will have this tension, and as you bring the head back, it will lift the sternum up a little bit. So the trick then is to keeping your head where it is, just allow this area to soften. So you have to remind yourself that this is flesh, it's not bone, so it can soften. So you just try to allow it to soften. Try to sort of sink the sternum down towards the belly. Now what will happen when you do that is it will pull your head forwards again. So then you've got to bring the head back, and of course the sternum will lift up. So you've got this interplay between the head posture and the sternum. And by gradually, repeatedly, sort of stretching and giving and stretching and giving and stretching and giving, you'll start to correct your posture to a Tai Chi posture, which is what you want. And this is one of the reasons why Tai Chi is good for your health, because it corrects your posture into a more healthy, balanced posture. But it's gradual, it's a slow process. You've got to be patient with it. So now, once you've got this, you are physically in what we call Wuji, which is the opening stance that you would do in Tai Chi. This is the Wuji Stance, or Wuji Stance. You also need to have the state of mind of Wuji. So it's not just about the physical, it's also about the mental. So the state of mind for Wuji is quiet. You just want to allow silence to fall across your body, fall down your body. That's one way to think of it. The other way to think of it is that you're just allowing your state of consciousness to head towards sleep. I don't want you to fall asleep, but just allow your sort of excitement levels to drop down, if you can. And if you can't, if that's not going to happen for you, then, well, just give yourself permission to allow it to happen when it's ready. And also there's this thing about awareness. In Tai Chi, we're moving the awareness around, and the more experience you get with doing the postures and the movements, the more that you can start to integrate moving the awareness with it. But Wuji is a really good place to start. And with the awareness, we just place the awareness as best we can in the centre of the head. So it's just your awareness of your body. Normally you're going to be focusing your awareness somewhere. If you're really lucky, you're completely aware of your entire body. If that's the case, just draw it all into the head. But wherever your awareness is, just try to draw it in to the centre of the head. And I'll give more details as we go along about exactly where that is and what that feels like. But for now, just go for somewhere that feels like it's roughly in the centre of your head. So this is actually a standing meditation posture. I'm not going to have us do a lengthy meditation with this, but I'm just going to get you to almost blink. So just allow the eyelids to close over the eyes softly, and allow the face to relax, and draw the awareness into the centre of the head, and then allow the eyelids to open again, keeping the awareness where it is. And you're roughly then in Wuji. That's Wuji Stance. There we are. So I've just talked us through the very first posture of Tai Chi, of the Tai Chi form that I'm teaching. So now I'm here, I've just thought of another question that I probably need to preempt, and that is, what style of Tai Chi is it that I'm teaching? And the answer is a bit complicated, I'm afraid. But I'll try and simplify it as much as possible. With Tai Chi styles, we have what we call lineages. So it's sort of like a family tree of teachers. This style traces back to 2 or 3 different lineages, but the most important one is the Yang lineage. So it's derived from the Yang style Tai Chi, but it's not called Yang style Tai Chi, and it's not quite the same as Yang style Tai Chi. But the frame, the stances, the movements tend to be quite similar. This actual style is called Tai Chi 37. Okay, but pretty much in any style, Wuji should be like this, so it should be the same across all of them. So what's important then is this expansion thing, yeah. We've connected with the ground. We're going to come to the Dantian in a minute. But for now, we want to expand, yeah. And in Wuji, the expansion happens up the spine. So you're trying to make the spine long. And I've talked you through doing that already. And we're softening the chest. I've talked you through all of that. But one other key feature is that you do want to try and relax the muscles around the spine and then elongate them. Yes, so they are moving, they are active, but they're all moving in the same direction together. So just stay like that for as long as you can while I talk through this. If you think about the bicep and the tricep, yeah, you think about guys who go down the gym and try to bulk up, and they sort of might stand there in the mirror and flex the bicep and see how big it is. What's going on when they're doing that is a sort of circuit of tension in this part of the arm, where the bicep is trying to pull the forearm back towards it, and the bicep is doing that, and the tricep is trying to stop it. So you're contracting the tricep, but contracting the bicep more. So we have this tension. And then if you don't do that, if they're just both relaxed. But what we want to do is have them both relaxed, but then try to make them go long. Yeah, so instead of contracting, they're extending. It's an active physical thing that you're doing. It's not relaxing, but you have to first relax in order to allow them to extend. Because if I haven't relaxed the tricep, then the bicep won't be able to extend. If I haven't relaxed the bicep, then the tricep won't be able to extend, and so on and so forth. Okay, I'm using the arm as the example, but for the now, we're just using the spine. We're just doing that in the spine primarily. The yin and yang in this posture. Yin in the legs, because the legs are soft. We've softened the legs. We're doing what's called sinking. And there's a number of different ways in which people translate this, but the way in which we translate it is to sink. You're allowing the legs to go soft. You're allowing yin to be dominant in the legs. And then what happens is gravity pulls the pelvis down towards the ground. Because we're leaning forwards from the hips and we've taken the body weight out of the spine, that then pulls the spine down, pulls the bottom end of the spine down, starts to stretch it open. So then by creating this lift, this pung, this expansion of the spine to send the head up, we're stretching open the spine, we're stretching, making it longer. We're not straightening it, we're just trying to make it longer, create space between the vertebral bodies. There, that's Wuji for you. The next stance in the form, the next stance in the set of movements that we have for Tai Chi is called Tai Chi. Yeah. So in Tai Chi, it's very similar to Wuji, and the first thing that you'd want to do to go from Wuji to Tai Chi is what I just did, which was to soften the legs more. So it's sinking deeper by softening the legs. So it's not a physical bending, it's not a physical sitting down, it's just letting go a little bit. Just enough to sink down without falling into a big puddle on the floor. Now as you do that, of course, you have an opportunity to create even more stretch in the spine. Yeah, so you lift the head up even more. So that's the bottom half of the body. The top half of the body is mainly in the arms. So we keep everything as it is in the top half of the body. It's stretching more, but we're also going to stretch this way. Yeah, so we're stretching by moving the shoulder joints in those directions. So you're just trying to get them to move. Now you might be thinking to yourself, how do I do that? Or I can't do that, or I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. All you can do is try, but don't force it, just try to make them separate apart. Yeah, so you've got more space in the chest cavity because you've got more width there, because you've moved the shoulders apart. Then you want to make that stretch come right the way down the full length of the arms. So you're moving the fingertips apart, moving them away from each other, that is the right fingertips from the left fingertips or vice versa. And you're letting them go by relaxing the chest area, by relaxing the shoulders. Imagine perhaps that you've got somebody hanging on to one side of your body, one set of fingers, and somebody else hanging on to the other set of fingers, and they're pulling in opposite directions, and you're just letting it go rather than resisting it. You're just allowing it to happen, allowing the chest to expand, but also going with it. Yeah, so you're allowing your arms to elongate so that they're relaxed, but they're stretching. So we have this expansion going down the full length of the arms, right the way to the fingertips. Now this is a linear stretch. I'd call it a linear stretch because it's a straight line. It's going from here to here. We're going to change it to a spiral stretch. Yeah, so you just gradually, slowly bring the hands around, trying to keep the length in the arms, and also allow the hands to drop down so that they're coming down just in front of the body. There. So the hands should be sat just in front of the hip joints. And by sat, what I mean is that you're flexing the wrists a little bit so that the fingers are pointing forwards and in at about 45 degrees, and so that the heels, particularly the ball of the thumb, is at the lowest point of the hand, and the fingers are pointing up a little bit too. So they're kind of pointing up and in, and they're pointing in because you're moving the elbows out and you're moving the shoulders out. So across the chest we still have this linear stretch going sideways, but then as the stretch travels down the arm, it travels in a kind of spiral right the way around the arm, right the way to the fingertips. And now, because you've got 5 fingers on each side, have a go at thinking about that as being 5 stretches on each side. It's almost like your arms don't exist anymore and your fingers are this long. So you've got 5 fingers all spiraling round and stretching. Hopefully you can feel that in some way. Hopefully it's not too painful for you. And remember, you still need to have this lean in the hips, but you also need to have this stretch in the spine, so keeping the head on top of the shoulders. If you've got a mirror, then it's well worth having that to hand so that you can check to see how you're doing. Okay. I'm just going to pause for a moment and check the settings over here. Okay. So we've covered 2 postures now. We've covered Wuji and we've covered Tai Chi. There's a 4th key thing. I've talked about 3 things. I've talked about grounding, I've talked about the Dantian, which I'm not going to do anything with just yet, but we will do something with in a moment. And I've talked about the stretch, this expansion. The 4th thing is the way in which you move. If you've ever seen people doing Tai Chi form on the beach or in the park, they're kind of like flowing around in a nice sort of smooth, flowing movement. And that's important, to do this smooth, flowing movement. And what I mean by that, or what's important about that, is the connection, the fact that your upper body is moving in synchronicity with the lower body. The arms are moving in synchronicity with each other. We usually use landmarks to go from one posture to another. So we'll have a landmark posture and another landmark posture, and we'll move slowly between them smoothly. And you need to make sure that, you know, everything is going to end up in the next posture at the same time. So they have to be moving in synchronicity. So, for example, if I were to go from, let me think. If I were to go from, let's do it this way around. If I were to go from here, which is a push, to here, which is another push, and then back again, which is a shoulder strike and an elbow strike. If I did that at a time, in fact I'm not sure I can even try to do it at a time, but if I did that at a time, so maybe I did this and then I moved my foot afterwards, and then I did that, and then I turned my pelvis afterwards, that isn't Tai Chi, because everything's moving in a disjointed way. Everything has to move together, flowing in a smooth flowing way. And so we can practice that in a number of ways. And the first way that I'd like to show you is a very simple exercise where you're back in Wuji. We're doing everything we did for Wuji. So if you remember, you've got this nice structure in the feet, the weight's centered on the balls of the feet, the legs are soft, you're stretching the spine, the head's on top of the shoulders, the arms are soft, and you're leaning forwards a little bit from the hips. And then all we do is turn the pelvis. Yeah, so we turn the pelvis one way and turn the pelvis the other way, and then back again, and then back again. You let the arms hang around and do their own thing. They're completely inactive, so they're just going to flail around a little bit. And all you're going to do is move the pelvis in a nice smooth way. So already we're starting to use a kind of a smooth movement. But also we're now starting to work the dantian, yeah? Because the dantian is in the belly. And the key thing about the dantian, about activating the dantian, certainly within Tai Chi, is that we make all our movements originate there, or feel like they originate there. So when you're doing this exercise, try not to do this, where you're moving the shoulders and your pelvis is staying rock steady. The shoulders need to be always in line with the hips. So if the pelvis can't move, then nothing's moving. So just move as far as your pelvis can go and no further. If you're going quite quick, because you have flexibility in your spine, you'll get a bit of overshoot in the shoulders. That's normal. But otherwise, try and keep the shoulders in synchronicity with the hips, because it's the hips that are driven by the dantian. Dantian drives the hips, and then that drives everything else in the body. Also, when you're doing this exercise, it's very important to make sure that you keep your knees pointing in the same directions as your toes. You don't want to allow the knee to fold in like that, because you're putting side pressure on the knee, which it's not equipped for, shall we say. So you keep the knees pointing in the same directions as the toes, and this is really warming up the hip joints and starting to get this moving and starting to give us the beginnings of an understanding of this synchronous movement that we need to do. Okay. Next, what I'd like to show you is a similar exercise, but rather than originating in Wuji, it originates in Tai Chi. So I'm just going to come down into Tai Chi, see if you can do likewise. So remember, you've still got this good structure in the feet, you've still got a stretch in the spine, you've still got the head on top of the shoulders, you've still got this stretch across the chest. The shoulders are moving sideways. Stretch goes in a spiral around the arms. And you're leaning forwards a little bit more deeply from the hips to keep the weight centered on the balls of the feet. We can do the same again, yeah? So we can start turning the pelvis from side to side, and we allow everything to happen because the pelvis is happening. And this is how we keep this synchronicity We make all the movement come from the belly, always, and everything moves because it's moving in the way it's going to move. So there's some deliberate things that I'm doing with other parts of the body, but they wouldn't be able to do those things if I wasn't doing what I'm doing with the pelvis. So what's happening here is a deliberate thing that you want to think about is the motion of the hands. Yeah, so the hand comes out and forwards in synchronicity with the hip on the same side, and then it comes back and in, or in and back, in synchronicity. So it's almost like the wrists are somehow attached by elastic or something to the hip joint. So it's kind of like being sent out, flung out from the hip joint, and then drawn back in again. So the hands and the hip joints are working in synchronicity. And you can go fast, and you can go slow. So again, we're warming up the hip joints by doing this exercise, but also warming up some other joints in the upper body as well. Good. And of course the most important thing is that you're working the dantian. Although we're doing very lightweight exercise, or low energy of exercise if you like, you still need to keep your fluids up. So it is important to drink between exercises. Now, there is one last piece that I'd like us to have from this video, and that is how we would move from Wuji to Tai Chi. Yeah? I'm going to give you a simplified version of what we use in this style, because what we use in this style is probably the hardest part of the entire form, and it's right at the beginning. So what I usually do is I teach a simplified version, get people learning lots of stuff, and once they're limboed up and they can do a lot of the moves, we then come back and learn that bit and put it in. So I'm not going to be showing you the Tai Chi 37 thing. I'm going to be showing you the Marc Price way of getting it. The thing about Tai Chi is that there is actually officially no form, and that's the reason why there's so many different forms. There's so many different styles. There's no actual form, and what we mean by that is that provided you're doing things correctly, how you string one posture and movement together with another, so long as it's doing it properly, so long as you're using the foundations and the basics properly, then you're doing Tai Chi. It's when you're not stringing them together properly, it's when you're not doing the things that you should be doing, when you're not connecting with the ground, when you're not moving your weight in the right way, that you're not doing Tai Chi. So although this isn't the official form for Tai Chi 37, it is Tai Chi. So what we do is, it's very simple. We start in Wuji and we start to sink. So we just allow the mind to drop down, and with it we allow the legs to soften. And as the legs soften, we stretch the shoulders, and we make that stretch come right the way down the full length of the arms in a spiral. Yeah, so I showed us how to get there the easy way, but this is the nice smooth flowing way now. Until the hands are seated, if you like, in front of the hip joints, and we have this nice spiral stretch coming right the way down the full length of the arms and out the tips of the fingers. There. Simple, huh? Shall we try that together? So get yourselves into Wuji. I'll talk you through Wuji, and then we can sink down into Tai Chi. Yeah. So first of all, make sure your feet are shoulder width apart and parallel, so the toes are pointing forwards or a little bit in. Then Bring the weight into the balls of the feet. Lift the toes up, stretch them gently forwards, and then place them down 2 by 2, starting with the big toes. Going right the way around the outside of the feet. So right the way around to the little toes, around the outside of the feet, and then into the heels. Maintaining that centrality, if you like, in the balls of the feet. Then just relax gently, slightly, the ankles, then the knees, then the hips, and then bring the pelvis back so that it's above the heels, so that your weight comes out of the balls of the feet. Bring the weight back into the balls of the feet by keeping the pelvis where it is and leaning forwards from the hips. And then stretch the spine, so lift the spine. Gravity's pulling the pelvis down. That's your anchor point. You can pull against that by lifting the head up. Arms are soft, shoulders are soft, chest is soft, head is on top of the shoulders. You're in Wuji. Okay, so from here, all you're going to do is place your awareness in the centre of the head momentarily, and then just let it drop. Just let it drop down. Once it gets to the belly, continue that movement externally or physically by softening the legs, at the same amount, the same speed. And don't sink any lower than your legs will allow you. So that could be, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch, or it could be 2 inches. It's entirely up to you, whatever feels comfortable for you. But as that's happening, you just make this stretch, this spiral stretch happen around the arms, so that the hands come and sit in front of the hip joints. We're still leaning forwards from the hips. We're still stretching the spine. The head is still on top of the shoulders. It's useful then, once you've arrived in Tai Chi, to just check internally. And also, if you've got a mirror, to check your mirror. I'm looking over here because I've got a mirror over here. So I can just quickly glance sideways and see where my head is. See what my neck's doing. Let's try that again, shall we? So starting in Wuji, bringing the awareness into the centre of the head, and then on my count of 1, we're going to drop the awareness down and then sink down. 1. Allowing the awareness to drop down, sinking down, and then stretching across the shoulders, spiral stretch down the arms, so that everything finishes up together in the right place. Pretty subtle, eh? The proper way of doing it is not subtle, so we'll go with this for now. One more go. Bringing the awareness into the centre of the head. 1. Allowing the awareness to drop down. As soon as it hits the belly, start sinking, stretching the shoulders, making it come all the way down to the fingertips in a spiral stretch, and then allowing them to just sit there in front of the hips. Voila, excellent. So that's as far as I'm going to take you today. I think we've covered a lot. So if you're watching this video, I recommend use the video to practice, so that hopefully when we come back to do the live Zoom session next week, we'll already have that under our belt so that we can work with what we've got and take it a step further. Literally a step further, because we'll be taking a step. I think that's everything I'm going to say, actually. Thank you very much for watching, and once again my apologies for the technical hitch that we had today with Zoom. That isn't going to happen next week because we're going to get it sorted out before then. Thank you.